came across this concept in Elizabeth Dilly many, many years ago, and she wants to connect it to the substance with a capital S of Spinoza. I'm not entirely sure if there's a parallel there or not, but I want to say that the Ein Sof is the central concept in the Kabbalah and in Judaism in general, because the Ein Sof is pure nothingness. It is pure nothingness in the sense that it is pure chaos. It is pure chaos, and this shows up in Kant, it shows up in Nietzsche, it shows up again and again and again, and it has to be summoned. This cosmic dust, which is identical, by the way, to the primal soup of the evolutionary mythology, needs to be summoned. Chaos needs to be created. Out of this chaos comes the new world. So that's the fundament of what we call modernity, and the very apogee, the zenith of modernity, which is the New World Order, which in my personal opinion is the ushering in of Antichrist at the rebuilt Temple of Jerusalem. No doubt the rebuilt temple to be financed by the American taxpayer. Now all of this is central to the concept of monarchy. Monarchy represents, at its most fundamental, the rulership of God over the earth. As God is the author and sustainer of natural law and natural laws, the earthly monarch is the author, so to speak, and the sustainer of human laws. It is a perfect pyramid from the purely spiritual world of God and his and the Logos manifestation in nature, which is very much the activity of natural law, and of course the analog to the monarch. And this is why, generally speaking, all forms of Christianity up until the extreme Protestants, the Anabaptists and other of these very destructive and Judaic forces, were royalists. This is the case for Orthodox, Catholics, Anglicans, and Lutherans. Because this basic concept, the metaphysical concept of the monarch as representing God's power, and to some extent imitating God's power, on the one hand, and then on the other hand, the monarch as the head of the family, the monarch as ethnarch and patriarch. These two things were viewed by what we now call the regime, or the New World Order, the illumined ones, the Kabbalists, the Neo-Pagans, whatever you want to call them. This situation was viewed as intolerable, because the monarchy is that which restrains the oligarchy. I want to make another claim, and I know I've made this many times before on this show, but in terms of politics, and politics is a very limited area of life. There's only so much we can expect out of it. But in politics, human beings only have really one choice: either monarchy or oligarchy. There generally is no in-between. And this is the central foundational idea of the killing of the king ritual. Because the point of murdering the king, whether in a symbolic sense or in a literal sense, and all the different concepts of kingship that we might use in society, like the patriarch of a family, like the father, like Christ himself, like God the Father, like the monarch, emperor, etc. The point of killing this center of power, this center of unity, is the summoning of chaos. And out of chaos comes the new world. In alchemical terms, you could think of the monarchy in Europe as a leaden metal, the revolutionaries as quicksilver, which then dissolves this And in the creation of this dissolution, this chaos, they then recreate humanity into gold. Alchemy is really a social science. It's about manipulating people. And I want to make something clear, is whether you read the Bible or whether you read medieval literature or ancient literature, you need to remember that quantitative measures, numbers and dimensions and stuff like that, always have a qualitative element. So numbers aren't just numbers. They're forms. They're forms of reality. They're qualitative aspects of reality. One is unity. One is divinity. Two is division. Two is female. We can go on and on and on about this. So no matter who you read, coming from the ancient tradition, including the occult tradition, things like numbers and dimensions and geometric figures are never just quantitative things. They are qualitative things. They are intensely powerful symbols. The killing of the king ritual is destruction of the number one. The number one is the masculine, rational, ruling figure, ruling having to do with the manifestation of the unity of natural law within society. In Orthodox terms, that is simply manifesting the rule of Logos, Christ himself, in the world. In many ways, when the Pharisees demanded of the Romans that Christ be executed, that was a Babylonian form of the killing of the king ritual. The Pharisees thought that in murdering their enemy, they would continue in power, continue in authority, continue in their wealth. All forms of the killing of the king ritual, to a great extent, partake in that initial murder of God. The killing of the king is about partaking of that king's power amongst those who have risen up in rebellion. This is central to Freud's civilization and its discontents, and it proves, at least from their point of view, my contention, that you either have monarchy as a symbol of unity or oligarchy as a symbol of controlled chaos. Or I should say, their psychological use of chaos for the sake of them gaining power. And I want to make it clear that from a purely psychological point of view, chaos increases the suggestive nature of those who live within it. Chaos, revolution, warfare, these are absolutely central. During war, times of economic upheaval, people become more suggestive. People then look for somebody or some group or some institution to save them. And they're willing to sacrifice quite a bit in order to be saved. So not only do we have the summoning of chaos, the summoning of this Ein Sof, this formless matter, and Aristotle's use of the word matter, that which can be created into anything because in and of itself it is nothing. But also the use of the Ein Sof, this sense of Aristotelian matter, this nothing that can be made into anything, this raw material is in fact also the summoning of suggestibility. Because the more the Ein Sof comes into existence, the more people are confused, the more the old foundations are removed, the more that people are willing to do anything to have some kind of stability. So I want to make it clear that the Ein Sof, in the Kabbalistic and Babylonian and Judaic sense of the word, manifests itself in revolutionary ideology, in the modern scientific mentality, and especially the idea of the evolutionary primordial soup. I see it even in the so-called stem cell debate in America, where, of course, the stem cell, prior to it becoming a specialized worker, is very much like the Ein Sof. It's a cell that, if given the right stimulus, can become anything. It can become a cell that specializes in cardio work or in the lungs or in anything else like that. The Ein Sof, this formless matter that then the elite can mold into whatever it wants. This is chaos. This is the foundation of all revolutionary systems. The idea of dissolving everything into its component parts, and then the revolutionary elite reforming it all according to their own demands and their own desires. All revolutionary movements, all modern scientific thinking has this at its basis. But in order for any of this to function, in order for this to be taken as truth, the king must be murdered. The king must be murdered because the Christian restrainer, that which oversees the Logos, the manifestation of the Platonic forms in nature, the foundation, the activity, the function of natural law, that has to be destroyed. There can't be any natural law in the scientific mentality. It has to start with a primordial soup of absolutely nothing. From that, we can then theorize as to how things came into existence. The central concept of evolution is that the evolutionary scientific establishment then can take control over this and manipulate it for their own purposes. All revolutionary ideologies use in one form or another this evolutionary concept. Capitalism does it in its analysis of feudalism and slavery. Marxism explicitly is evolutionary. Materialism and positivism is evolutionary. We start from this alienated mind which projects itself into the spiritual world. The modern revolutionary world views this as now being conjoined in a sexual and marital relation where our mind and that of the material world become one and the same thing. This may sound very esoteric, and of course it is, and yet you can't understand anything about modernity and where these various mentalities came from unless you understand that the primal struggle has to be the murder of the God who is responsible for the actual existence and functioning of natural law. Natural law does not exist. It must be created according to the mind of the revolutionaries. We will create the law. We will create what works and what doesn't. Because we will also create the very system within which you think. The very building blocks of making a rational argument we have created. And that you can see everywhere. It is symbolized in the Old Testament in the Tower of Babel. It is symbolized in Judaic and Masonic lore as the two pillars of the temple. And like everything else, the Temple of Solomon itself, to be rebuilt in Jerusalem and to be inhabited by the Jewish elite as the reigning Antichrist, this is also a symbol for the new world. The Temple of Solomon is something that is designed and brought into being by the revolutionary elite, the architects who use this primal matter in order to construct their new world and their new society. So, according to James Frazier, who was really one of the first to lay out this killing of the king ritual in more or less its occult mentality, at least in its exoteric mentality, is that the murder of the king comes when that king seems to be decrepit, showing signs of age, showing signs of weakness. The sort of ontological concept here is that when the king is murdered and the soul is forcibly ripped from the body by this revolutionary cult that conspires to murder the king, that force, that power is then shared but taken, of course, and shared amongst that revolutionary elite, sort of parceled out. The power of that monarch is taken and parceled out amongst the revolutionaries. This is also the mentality of cannibalism in almost all societies, and this is present even in the French Revolution, where the eating, and this goes back, to Babylon, the eating of the murdered king in one form or another is a means of, quite literally, partaking of this royal blood, of this royal power. Of course, in our liturgy, you see this taking place. And this takes place with Christ's glorified body, not his human body, of course, his glorified post-resurrection body. And this is something that we do to partake of Christ's divinity. Now, in this case, we're talking about a purely secular and materialist idea coming from the Babylonian Talmud, manifest in the Kabbalah, and then manifest throughout the revolutionary mentality wherever it takes place. In order to summon chaos, the king must be killed. And the concept of king is very broad. It can be the Father, it can be men in general, it can be Christ, it can be God the Father, it can even be, in the normal sense, the king of a country, the patriarch of a society, whatever it might be. The priesthood, the Orthodox world, to constantly tear them down, to destroy them, to sacrifice them, to therefore partake of their power via the chaos that is then summoned. This is the modern world at its foundation. Okay, we're going to take a break now. When we return, we're going to finish this up.